All right. Thank you all for coming here today on what I call a kind of a crappy day. Now, I'm a big biker, okay? So one of the things I'm real happy about today is that we're holding the lecture today, because if we weren't, I would be out biking, and this is not really a good day to go biking. Again, my name is Jim Bray. I'm the current chair of the Environmental Commission in Lower Makefield Township. Again, I extend a welcome to all of you. Before our speaker starts today, I want to give you just a short history of what we're all about as far as the EAC is concerned in Lower Makefield Township. I am now, I think, the 21st year on the EAC. When I first joined back in 2004, I was a little disappointed because at that time the board was essentially reactive. When the township asked them to do something, they did it, and they did a good job of it. But that isn't the way I operate over the years. So at that time, a lot of people who were on the board for a long time were transitioning off. So I saw a real good opportunity there. Also, at the same time, the complexion of the Board of Supervisors changed dramatically. And what we ended up with was a board that was incredibly pro-environmental. So we started looking proactively at things. Now, I think one of the claims to our fame over the years is that we turned out to be the world's best plagiarizers. There's a lot of really, really good stuff out there. Now, we're also have been very innovative when we had to be, but if we didn't have to be, it's all out there. So 2006 to 2009 became what I called, in the history of our EAC, the golden years. We had some really, really talented people on board, as we did today, and we also had the complexion of the Board of Supervisors that was very, very pro-environmental. So in 3 years, what we actually did is we almost set history. In 2006, the end of 2006, we put into effect a low-impact development stormwater management ordinance that was incredibly cutting edge. We had people all over the country actually copying that from us. Geoff Goll was one of the main contributors to that ordinance at that time. Secondly, we put into effect a native plant ordinance. And this was one of the first ones in the United States. There were several going there that I took a look at, but this has had an incredibly positive impact on Lower Makefield Township. Now, I'm not going to give you a dissertation today on the benefits of native plants, okay, because I think I'm speaking to the choir here. But it's been in since early 2007, and since that time, we have a rough estimate that we have put into Lower Makefield Township over 10,000 native plants that never would have been planted if we did not have this ordinance. The ordinance was incredibly popular, and as soon as it went in, the secretary came up to me and she said, "Jim, I'm getting requests all over the United States." So what we did is we put it on our website, and still today, a lot of people are copying our ordinance verbatim. We love that. That's the way it's supposed to work. The third one we actually put in was a green building code that applied to municipal building structures. The community center that we have right up here on the road, on Oxford Valley Road, Gold LEED certification. So we have been a busy group. There's a lot more going on. We also started our lecture series back then. And each year since then, we have environmental lectures anywhere from about 2 to 4 a year. And quite frankly, now I've spoken enough. So I'm going to introduce Geoff Goll. Geoff Goll was part of our group when those things were happening I just talked about. And he's also the president of Princeton Hydro, which is a very highly regarded, prestigious environmental engineering firm located now in Trenton, New Jersey. Geoff is a real aficionado of native plants. He knows a lot about them. And he also has this wonderful rain garden on his own property. So without speaking any more, Geoff Goll.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, actually, I'm using that rain garden in this presentation. So, and there'll be a cameo from my better half coming up. So what we're going to talk about is our rain gardens, and we're going to get into it. It is actually one of the allowed stormwater management techniques when you're, for example, if you're doing an addition to your house, and you have to, let's say you exceed your impervious or you're increasing your impervious. This is similar, you know, people sometimes put in dry wells, infiltration trenches and things like that. The rain garden, as I'll explain, is actually the more sustainable one and the one that'll last the longest and the easiest to maintain. If you do a dry well, sometimes people do that just so they can bury it and get underground. They don't last that long. They get clogged fairly quickly, and then next thing you know, you have to rip it up and take it out. This is something at least you can also take personal pride in and work with, and it can be a nice amenity to your yard. So with that, I'm gonna there's gonna be a couple of ups and downs in this talk. I'm gonna make you feel really bad in the beginning about where you live, and then we're gonna talk about some of the fun stuff, some of the good stuff that you can do, and then we're gonna get into going through the steps of building a rain garden, and also as well as all that, you know, what's behind it and the benefits associated with it. So with that, I'm going to start with this. Your lawn is a desert. Now you can say, I don't understand. It's glowing green. It's doing great. It's one species, usually. Mine is about 10, and none of them are native, even though they're, you know, we call them weeds. They're all technically weeds. But it's a monoculture. You treat it, you artificially, people put nitrogen down, they put other fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides. Why do we have to do all this? Because they're not native to this area. So without helping them along, it's a problem. And the issue is, we have issues of around the world of soil health. Soil health is actually one of the bigger contributors to climate change. Much of the planet is covered right now with agriculture, and we've pretty much destroyed a lot of our soils and things of that nature. So they call it desertification, which is the process in which fertile land becomes desert, typically as a result of drought, deforestation, or inappropriate agriculture. So nearly 1/5 of the world's land is threatened with desertification. So you guys got to do something about this. So we're going to try to help you out here a little bit and do your small part. So we're also getting a lot of floods. You guys have heard the news stories. There was tragedy over a year ago. It was actually covered in The Guardian, and it was a big flash flood going on up in Upper Makefield. People drowned. This on the right is down in Darby, Pennsylvania, where we've done some work as well. And there's a lot of, none of us are immune from flooding issues. And again, something you guys can do about it. You can't help the Delaware, but you can do it on local flooding. So you're going to say, how can I do this? I always sing the Allman Brothers when somebody's like, I need you to do this. And I'm like, man, I'm just trying to make a living. Give me a break, will you? But it is. Lawn work is a lot of work. And a rain garden will be a little bit more work, but I think it'll be it's also a lot of fun. And it could potentially reduce your area of your lawn that you're mowing. So keep that in mind. So it all sounds, you hear rain garden, right? Yeah, bugs and bunnies. This is like greenwashing. What is this really going to do? What is this really going to do? Is it greenwashing? Absolutely not. It's if designed correctly and installed and maintained, you're going to find out it's going to be a great amenity to your yard, and you're going to feel good about doing things good for the environment. Is it bugs and bunnies? Sort of. The whole idea is not only to, while you're managing your stormwater, maybe increase your local biodiversity a little bit. Get some butterflies and bees and things like that. And I found actually a frog in mine last year. I think he just didn't know where he was going, or he or she. Actually, Beth, I think he was coming from your pond across the street. So, but anyway, it is about also biodiversity, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, it's actually what we call green infrastructure. Has anybody heard that term before? So yeah, green infrastructure is basically using nature-based features to provide ecosystem services for people. What does that mean? Basically sustainable flood control and addressing climate change, and also, and for example, lowering the heat island effect in cities by planting trees. But these are all examples of green infrastructure. And rain gardens, as you see on the left, is one of them. And so it is a recognized opportunity to actually manage stormwater and provide that green infrastructure. You're providing services to the township because you're also doing your part to help reduce flooding. You're not going to get any taxes back on that, and they're not going to pay you for it, but at least it is something that you can do to help your neighbors out downstream. So, what is a rain garden? This is a rain garden. This is actually provided by the Philadelphia Water Company. I don't think we could show one any better, but basically what you're doing is you're taking stormwater, usually from your roof. That's usually the easiest way to capture it, and it runs downhill into this area where you've either dug out or mixed up or amended the soils and planted it with vegetation, which then get nice deep roots, not like those lawn roots, which are like an inch thick. These can get down 6, 7, 8 feet at least in this area, and it's planted with vegetation. Water comes down during a storm event. It fills up the rain garden. Any overflow will then go over, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works and how to design that as well. So there's a number of different things going on here. Obviously, you're capturing the stormwater, so you're reducing a peak flood downstream. You're capturing some of that stormwater and allowing it to infiltrate into the ground, so you're replenishing the local aquifer. I know we don't drink out of the groundwater, but it's still a natural resource that is worth preserving, and it also eventually provides source water for local wetlands and streams and things in the area, so that's a benefit. And then it also provides a little island of habitat in your yard that you can use to attract butterflies and bees and birds. I've seen hummingbirds in ours, and it actually does provide an island basically in a desert of lawns in our area. And I have a lawn. We have a lawn. So it is something that is also, you need to have a lawn to keep, your yard attractive and make sure that you can actually maintain things outside. And it's also a living space. So you do want some lawn. This is not necessarily against lawns, but this can also help reduce that lawn and have that balance of ecosystem services as well as serving your own purpose. So we're going to start talking about that and how to design this. And by the way, as I talk, this is basically what I'm going through is making it so that you can build it yourself. There are certain aspects, if you want, on the size, you may need to hire a contractor to help you out, but you guys can all do this yourself. So why should I put one in? Well, you may have to. You may have to put one in. You come to the township, you apply for a permit. They say, oh, you're increasing your impervious, you're going to have to manage stormwater. Okay, go to the Act 167 Stormwater Ordinance, and there's instructions for small projects such as your home, and then you get options to manage stormwater, and one of those is a rain garden. So the township actually promotes the use of rain gardens as one of the procedures to manage stormwater when you're doing your building. And it is recognized. Obviously, I said it reduces lawn area, maybe saves some money on gas and your time. And basically curb appeal, if you plant it right, it's basically an inverse planter is what it is. Instead of being a mound of plants, it's got a little tiny depression. And then once the plants are in, you can't even see the depression. So it just looks like a planting island. It can keep water away from your foundation. The reason I put ours in, not just because I'm an engineer and I over-engineer everything, but we live in a very flat area in Lower Makefield in our area, and we could not daylight stormwater drains from our roof out to the street. It's so flat. It just would never surface. And it was embarrassing as a water resource engineer. I was getting water in our basement. And it was all because of the drainage in the house from the roof going into the basement. So since I've installed mine, it's actually stopped. Again, it's relatively easy maintenance. It's basically weeding, going in, cutting down some excess and things like that. And then, of course, like I said, if it's needed for stormwater compliance. So why is the rain garden the solution to all our woes? Well, it's not necessarily the solution to all our woes, but it's doing your part. It does soil health regeneration. So you're taking compost, you're mixing it into bottom. That's one of the elements of building one. So you're basically improving the health of the soil in that location. It does sequester carbon because you're taking compost and putting it into the ground. We were just talking, if anybody hear of biochar? Has anybody heard that? So that's something, that's another whole nother course, but you can actually mix that in, and that helps actually capture nutrients and clean the soil, and also provides great nutrients for plants. Biodiversity protection, we all have heard about honeybees and how much their populations have crashed. I do get some, but whenever you see a honeybee nowadays, I think they're from a hive, somebody's hive that owns it. So, and you can actually reduce downstream flooding. Are you going to help Yardley Borough with the Delaware River? No. But where I live, it does eventually drain down to Yardley, and could potentially help, if all the homes did it, reduce peak flow stormwater, peak flows from stormwater downstream. And like I said, it recharges our aquifers and it cleans our water. So how can you go wrong? So let's get started. We're going to go through and we're going to show you the step-by-step process of building a rain garden. Yep, this slide again. So I just want to remind you guys that what the components are. So when we go through this, I'm going to be explaining how we dig up, amend the soils, what to plant, how to get the water there, and how to prep your yard and then maintain it in the long run. So we had about 10 steps that you can go through. We actually also have it on our company website. I did just recently, when I was reviewing it, I had to tweak a few things, so my steps are a little different than what was on the website. But in general, you can follow that, and then you can build one of these yourselves. So this is our house. It's in the winter. It's easy to see. And so what you want to do, and this is going to go through our rain garden that we built here. We actually had an old Colorado blue spruce that we had to take down. It was dying, not native, but not invasive. But anyway, we had to take it down. It was dying. And I thought, and my wife, over the years, I kept talking and talking, I'm going to build a rain garden, I'm going to build a rain garden. And she's like, yeah, whatever. And then I built it. And then I couldn't believe it. But basically what you want to do is, the rain garden, as the diagram showed, you want to be downhill from your house. You don't want it to be uphill, you don't want it to be anywhere you're going to be able to, that water's going to come back to the house. So you want it to be able to drain away. You want it at least 10 to 15 feet away from the foundation. Most guidance says at least 10 feet. Again, I like to be a little bit conservative. If you have a basement, I would suggest at least 15 feet away from your basement. You got to make sure there's no underground utilities. It would be quite shocking if you went to an electric line under your where you're digging. Nobody laughed at that. Okay. Anyway, you want to keep it away from the drip lines of trees. Obviously, the drip line is usually also a reflection of where the roots are. So if you start digging through the roots, it's going to hurt the tree. So you want to stay away from the drip line of your trees. Make sure you don't have high groundwater where when the water goes in, it just won't infiltrate and sit there. And then soil types. Now this is, again, a whole nother type. You can actually go to soils maps. The USDA online has soils mapping, and you can see generally the soil mapping in your area. In our area, because it's been developed for so long, it's mapped as more of an urban soil. But then you can also go out and do what I've done is hand augers and making sure that the soil type is good. Just a little background. Where I live, over on South Homestead Drive, our area is an old alluvial terrace. So you have about 4 feet of very fine-grained sand, silty sands and sandy silts, which is not necessarily as conducive to infiltrating in the ground. But if you go down about 4 feet, it turns into like a beach sand, because that's where what they call the alluvial depositions were there. It was an old, floodplain at one time. And so you go down there, and it's really nice granular soil, granular sands, which is great for infiltration. So I went a little overboard on mine. You don't necessarily have to dig all this out, but you'll see what happens because you can amend it and you still will get infiltration. But I wanted to make sure that mine would drain out over at least our maximum of 8 or 9 hours. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So you want it to be downhill, and also this one, in this case, we decided to capture the runoff from our front roof. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that the soil will drain. So the best thing to do is you go out. I would suggest you go out to where you want to put your rain garden. Remember, you're going to make a slight depression, so I would actually dig a hole down to the level of where your rain garden floor is expected to be. And then you dig yourself a 6 to 12 inch diameter hole, 12 inches deep. Get yourself a wooden or a plastic ruler, put it in there, fill it with 8 inches of water, let it empty at least twice. You want to get the soil saturated, so when you're making sure that it can infiltrate, it's actually under a saturated condition. That's the most conservative. And then refill 8 inches again, and then record the time it takes to empty. Your optimal time is 4 to 8 hours to empty. That would be great. That's like 1 to 2 inches an hour. But it's okay if it takes up to 16 hours. So if you get like a half an inch an hour, you'll be good. Anything lower than that, again, you don't have to worry about mosquitoes until it's like 72 hours. So, but hopefully, if it's a diverse enough system, you'll have all the bugs in there that'll help, control the mosquitoes. But that's something where you want to make sure that you can get the soils in. It doesn't mean you can't do anything here. Like I did, I actually dug down a little deeper to get to better soils. Or you can amend the soils and mix it with compost, and that'll also help with the infiltration. So, designing and building it. Now you've figured out, okay, it's a viable location. You're going to need to figure out how big is this rain garden going to be. Now remember, it's a rain garden. The infiltration portion is only one portion. Then you have the slopes that come out, and then you want to put a planting buffer around it to make it, to add to the attractiveness of it. So what you do is you figure out the area in square feet. The rule of thumb is the area of the bottom of your rain garden. This area here should be about 1/6 to 1/10 of the rainfall. I'll capture about 2 inches of rain, plus or minus, depending on which you use. As a matter of fact, the Township ordinance, if you actually have to do this for your addition or anything you're building, you have to capture 2 inches of water. So you'll take your roof or area, let's say you have an addition and it's 100 square feet, you're going to take that 100 square feet, multiply it by 2 inches, divide it by 12, and that's how many cubic feet you're going to have to make the size of your rain garden. So it's obviously a fraction of the size of the area you're controlling, but that's what you do. But the rule of thumb, if you're doing this for yourself, you can just basically go with this rule of thumb here. You want your maximum water depth of 8 inches. The reason being is plants, if you start going deeper and the water stays longer for some reason, it could end up drowning your plants, and then you have all kinds of problems. It also ensures that there's going to be enough time for that water to get in the ground. By the way, if your soils aren't quite as good, what you can do is instead of going 8 inches, maybe go 6 inches, maybe go 4 inches. But of course that'll increase the size of your rain garden. But regardless, there are ways that you can go around it. It's really just trying to make sure that it'll be functioning appropriately. And in any shape you like. You can make it kidney shape, square shape, whatever. You can put your initials in the lawn, whatever you want to do. So, what you first want to do is you want to dig a hole. You want to at least get down. Now, this is our rain garden in our front yard. And again, I went down 4 feet. I highly suggest you never do that yourself, because I did. And it was a huge mistake. And every time I would go out, it would be 90 degrees. And Amy gave me the idea. I actually had one of our folding umbrellas over me to keep the sun off me. I also went a little overboard. I could have probably just dug down to the elevation I needed, put some soil amendments in, and then the water probably would have stayed a little longer, but it still would have went into the ground. But in this case, as I'll show you, I dug down to that really good permeable soil myself. And then I also ran into the roots from the old blue spruce. That was a lot of fun. and that's when you borrow chainsaws from your neighbors. This is really big. Why? Because this is required by law. If you're going to dig anything in your yard, you got to call before you dig. This is the Pennsylvania one call. You call the 811 number. You give them your address. You get them the location. Sometimes you may have to send them a sketch of where you're going to be digging, and they'll come out and mark out. Now they only mark out the street, but at least you can know where some of your utilities are coming in if they're coming in off your yard. Regardless, even if you know there's no utilities there, it's still the law. You got to do it, because if you break something, then you're going to be responsible for it. So make sure you do that. So get ready for the comments from your neighbors. So as I was out there digging, I got, Geoff's in the foxhole again. What are you doing down there? Are you playing Army? That's a nice looking mine you have. Those are the kind of things what your great neighbors do for you when they walk by. They don't offer to help. They don't say, do you need a hand or anything? No. They keep your feet on the ground or underground. So anyway, that's some of the comments that we get. They'll appreciate that if they see this talk. So we're going to go now to step 5. Did I do that? Yeah. Step 5. Again, I wrote this as optional because this is where I did a soil replacement. So I wanted to have a nice permeable soil, so I got mason sand. I ordered a load of that. I put it into my excavation. I then, you can see here, that's where the sand is all placed down. I actually went to the Township compost yard over on Patterson Farm. Where they had the windrows. I snuck in there. I don't know if I was supposed to be in there or not. Maybe. What's the statute of limitations? This was like 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway,
You're safe.
okay. So I went and I got a bunch of garbage cans full of compost. The township has really high quality. You should all give yourself a round of applause. The township has great compost. It really does. There's not a lot of trash in them. Sometimes through my work, we get compost from places for big projects. It has a lot of trash in it and stuff. This stuff is actually very clean. They do a great job at composting it completely. And it really makes a great soil amendment. So it's a nice leaf compost. So then I went in there and I dug it by hand again. I mixed it up by myself. I went down, I only mixed the top, I think 18 inches with the compost. Really, that's all you need for the plants and to grow. So below that was the sand and then going down into the bottom. And then that's kind of what it looked like at the end. Still kind of looks like, it still kind of looks like this. But it's getting there. It's getting there. So up to step 6. Okay, so the step 6 is you're going to need to, we talk about an overflow. So you're going to capture that first 2 inches of rain. But we get 5, 6, we get 100-year storm events, so 8, 9 inches of rain sometimes. That rain garden is not designed to handle that. So what you do is it's as simple as making a small depression on the downstream side, and I took a fabric and placed it underneath, and I went to Home Depot and I bought some rounded river stone or little river gravel, and I lined it there. And so you also, I wrote this down, keep the drainage pattern the same. Don't capture roof runoff that normally it would run over the ground in one direction and then send it in another direction. The reason being is you could potentially cause a problem for your neighbor or create an erosion issue or something like that. So you want to keep it going in the same direction that it's always been going. You're just handling it a little different and trying to capture some of it. By the way, when you capture the first 2 inches of rain, you're pretty much capturing, I think it's over 90% of the rain events during the year, just to keep in mind of that. So you're actually, even though it's not going to capture those larger storms, you're capturing most of the rainfall and keeping it. So you want to do that. So that's the other part of it. So this is where there's an appearance here. She's super excited about that right now. I think I'm in big trouble. But what you now want to do is select and plant the plants. So you want to take it. You want to, and again, we talked about this before. It's not just the plants that are going to be in the rain garden itself. It's also around the upland plants. So you might want to get some upland plants. Like here, we've got some butterfly weed. And then we've got some coneflowers and things like that. In here we got cardinal flower, and that's Joe Pyeweed. And I'll show you the list of other plants that you can put in. There's so many plants types you can put in. I encourage you to use native plants. They do thrive, and they will thrive in these rain gardens, especially if they get enough water. And so they're actually doing really well right now. So this is what it looks like planted. Again, we've got cardinal flower in here. We've got I've got New York ironweed over here. We've got Joe Pyeweed. I forgot what that one is. It's a little blurry right now from up here. But those are the kind of plants, by the way, they're wet tolerant. So they're not aquatic plants, but they're wet tolerant, meaning they can grow in a wetland or an area that is inundated with water a number of times a year. But they'll also be able to tolerate a little bit of dryness too. So that's something as well that you can just make sure you get plants that are wet tolerant. The Stony Hill Nursery is actually a pretty good place. They have both native and non-native plants. You can get them from there. Pinelands Nursery in New Jersey. I think they mostly sell to businesses, but I think if you talk to them, they could potentially give you can get little smaller plants to start growing as well. And so there's another number of places in the area. Or you can also get native plant seed. You can order that online. So that's another thing that you can do. But it's nice to plant the plants so that you can actually have an immediate impact. So this is from the Stroud Water Resource Center. And in Pennsylvania, they're a highly regarded water research center and nonprofit. But they have online ideas for different kinds of plants. So I actually also have switchgrass. I can talk to you forever about some of these plants. Switchgrass is great, but it gets big and you have to control it because it really likes to spread. Not onto your lawn, it just gets bigger and bigger and starts to drown out your other plants. You can get like ferns that are, if you're in a shady area, you can plant more ferns that are water tolerant. You can get like turtlehead. These are really cool, like little plants. And then so there's a number of different types of plants that you can put in here. Blue flag iris, that's the native iris. If you ever see the big irises, like the yellow ones, and they're still beautiful, they're not native. And they're not necessarily water tolerant. These are. And then we have actually a bunch of sweet bay magnolias. They're water tolerant, plus their flowers smell great when they're blooming. So really you have, and then this is sort of an example layout. You can actually draw one out yourself if you want, or you can do like me. I just did it by eye. So. You're an engineer. Yeah. I'm a little atypical for that, but yes. So get ready. Make sure you have a good back. But now we built the rain garden, we've got it all set up, and now we got to get my roof drainage to it's recommended because it's harder to get roof runoff to your rain garden, especially if it's flatter ground. And this way, I decided to put the drainage pipe in because it would immediately be able to take the water away from the house and go to the rain garden without infiltrating. I didn't want it to get near my foundation, because that's where I was having the most problems. So I put the pipe in. So here's some of your tools that you're gonna need. Obviously, I would suggest this flat edge spade. These trench little spades, they're good for putting the drainage pipe in. You get your PVC piping, which I'll show you in a minute. And then obviously your glue. I like to glue, again, I overdo it. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I wanted my pipes watertight. So I put the PVC glue pipe in. And then I use a level. And not that I want the pipes to be level. You don't want them to be level. You actually want them to slope downhill. You can actually use this to pretty much eye it to make sure it's sloping away. So I basically used it, and I would line the level up, and as soon as it was level and there was a gap on the downhill side of it, I knew I was going in the right direction. So you just want to make sure that you're able to get the positive drainage out to your rain garden. So here's all the components. There's the PVC piping components. I actually connected this roof drain here. There will be a part 2 that I'm going to be installing, and I've prepped for that already. I have to enlarge by the way, I have to enlarge my rain garden and add another one in the backyard because we're doing an addition, and for the impervious cover, I have to control it. So we're going to be doing this all over again, but this time I'm hiring an excavator. I'm not going to do that again. But anyway, so these are the piping systems. This is it. I connected it right to the house. I also suggest I take the PVC pipe with an elbow and I actually put it up about up to the siding here and a little above, so that if the water ever for some reason backs up, it's got a little bit more buffer before it would spill out and go over there. And I have another backup here that I'll show you that I use, that I came up with, that's also sort of another fail-safe from back flooding into your house. So again, here's the trench. Here's where I was going to I connected. This is it right here. So if you look here, this is a pop-up emitter. And so this pipe is going over to my house, and this one's going to be going down and into the rain garden. And the reason I put that here is if for some reason that pipe ever clogged up or something happened and the water started backing up, this is much lower. This is about 6 or 8 inches lower than where it comes out of where the ground is at my foundation. And so if water ever backed up, it'll just pop out here, and this is about 10 to 12 feet away from my house. So it'll pop up out here and then flow down to the street. So that's another sort of backstop that I put in to make sure that we don't get any flooding in our basement. I'm actually going to be, in our next phase, I'm going to be connecting another one. So I put this in here. I blocked that off temporarily, and I put the connector in there. Again, doing all the layout, making sure everything's level. And this is it going out to the rain garden. So I put a bend in it, and then I put it out to the rain garden there. And cutting the invisible dog fence at the same time. So that was fun. So what it looks like when you first are done, we went in, we put the mulch in, put all our plants in, everything's in, it all looks great. And it looks a little, you're like, oh, that kind of looks sparse. But this is it a year later. So a year later, a lot of these plants started they really came up. We added some additional plants in the early spring, but you can see how much it really mostly filled in by itself. So a lot of these plants, they thrive, they get enough water. We're capturing the water from this part of the house, and it's all being piped into this location, and if there's a water overflow, it comes out here. So when I first put it in, my neighbors also made fun of me. I'd be out there in an umbrella watching the water. I'm like, all right, is it still working? I hope it's still working. So this is what, you got to have a little patience, just like any planting area. And then once it grows, it's actually not only self-maintaining and self-regenerating, you actually probably do need to go in there, and I've been giving plants to friends and things like that because it's really productive with plants. And then I'll sometimes experiment. I'll put another type of plant in or something like that. But again, it looks just like a landscaped island. You wouldn't really think of it as anything else if you drove by now. Well, if you drive by it now, everything's dead. And that's the other thing. I'm showing you all the pretty pictures. In the winter, just like everything else, the plants go dormant, they die. As a recommendation, and my wife, is also very cognizant to do that. You should leave those plants in all winter. They're good a lot of insects will use them for hibernation or placing their eggs, praying mantis and things like this. Sometimes they'll mount the eggs on the plants. So if you do that too early, if you clear it either in the fall or too early in the spring, you'll kill all those beneficial insects. So you would definitely want to, if you can, wait till after the last frost to take those out. So that's what we did. And then again, of course, my neighbors in the winter drive by and say, what are you going to do about that rain garden? But once the spring and summer comes around, it's awesome. So that's step 9. Step 10 is maintain. So you have to maintain this rain garden. You need to cut out, obviously, look for weeds. Try to take those out. Weeds are those undesirable plants that'll grow. They're either not native or very aggressive. And so what they'll do is they'll crowd out your other plants. And a lot of them are not necessarily as attractive or beneficial for insects and things like that. So you want to do that. You want to cut out excess as it grows and it gets bigger and bigger. You want to do that. You want to check for your plant health or any of the plant species you planted here. Sometimes you'll put a plant in and it's really not well suited for this area or for the situation it's in. And so you may want to just switch out the plant species. And again, in the spring after the last frost, remove the dead prior year growth. we take it and we compost it in our rear yard, or you can, take it to the recycling yard in Lower Makefield, right here behind the building, things like that when you're doing your yard. You also want to annually kind of go in and rake the bottom, because if it's doing what it should do, it's capturing pollutants and all kinds of things, and so it can clog up the soil. So by raking it, what'll happen is it'll help to break up the soil and maintain that the infiltration capacity. And by pollutants, it's not like it's capturing all kinds of like hydrocarbons and things, but similar things like could be your roof grit, from your roof, or other solids and things like that that it's capturing. So suspended solids. And then obviously replenishing the mulch every year, just like you might do with the rest of your yard. So that's what you do there. And then this is it. This is what I am famous for, going out in the rain and watching it. So I made let's see if so that's it running right now. Well, not right now, but this is when it was running soon after we first planted it and the things were growing. And so you can see how it's, if you could see it, it was like kind of the water running into it, and then within about 8 hours, it disappears. So it dries out, and you're the better for it. So, let's see if I can do that. So, with that, and I was told to leave like 15 minutes for answers. Just a little interesting thing here. So I started thinking, and I talked about this, like I have one rain garden. All right, there's one rain garden in our neighborhood. If I could get everybody to build a rain garden, and I'm not going to look at you, Beth, this is not pressure. If I could get everybody to build a rain garden in our neighborhood, imagine what we could do for downstream flooding, things like that. So what I did is, as we all do nowadays, experimenting in artificial intelligence, there's a website, I forgot the name of this one, and I said, it's an image website, it generates images. So I said, I want to see a neighborhood from overhead with an angled view, and there's rain gardens in every front yard, and and everything is nicely planted and everything else, and this is what I came up with. So imagine if we could, and it literally just came up with this by scratch, crazy thing that artificial intelligence is. But if you actually come up and take a close look, from afar, it's almost like an impressionist painting. If you look at it from afar, they look like houses, but when you look up, when close, they're like blobs. It doesn't look like much of anything. So it kind of gets a sense of it. But anyway, imagine everybody having rain gardens in their yard. Imagine the increase in biodiversity, soil health, carbon sequestration, downstream flooding benefits, replenishing our aquifers, maintaining the health of our local wetlands by replenishing those aquifers. And if we could do this, as Howard Zinn, the philosopher, said, small acts when multiplied by millions of people can transform the world. And there's nothing more true than everybody, if they built a rain garden, we would all be doing a true benefit to our local community and for the planet. So with that, I'll take any questions. Yes, sir.
So if you don't have the physical ability yourself to do that, where do you find someone to help you with heavy lifting, excavation, PVC pipe, et cetera, et cetera?
There's two ways to go about this, and that's a great question. So the question is, what if you don't have the physical ability to build one of these yourself? It is a lot of work, even if you hire an excavation contractor. You got to do planting, maintaining, and things like that. Well, there's two ways you can go about it. Well, a combination of ways. And so you can yourself, if you have the idea, you can draw it up, you can do all the planning, you can walk out there or get out there and look where you want to place it, come up with a plan, and you can hire a landscape contractor. A landscape contractor could readily put this in. There are actually landscape contractors out there who are very familiar with building rain gardens because they are being required more and more for municipalities. So you can hire a landscaper to basically help you out to do that. The other thing is, and is what my firm does is if it's we actually design on a much larger scale these types of things as well. You can hire an engineer or a landscape architect who will come in and they can do all the work for you, do the design, and then you can get a contractor to come in. We don't do the actual implementation, we just would design it and put it in. I would say, well, mine costs probably at the end of the day, I don't know, $500 maybe, $600, if that. But if you hire a landscaper, it's going to be in the thousands. It's going to be a couple $1,000s. But you can do it. You can do it relatively. It's not difficult. It doesn't take complicated equipment or anything. Standard equipment can do it, but it could end up costing you. But you know what? When you're building an addition, you're spending all that money for the addition. This is like 1% of the cost, potentially. So, yeah. Good question. Thank you. Yes?
How did your rain garden do it last summer?
I'm sorry?
Last summer?
Oh, with the drought. They thrived. Everything was fine, actually. Everything was growing really well. Yeah, and it actually was really well. So what happens is, the other thing is, you saw how thick it got, is it actually provided its own moisture capture. So, you know, if you look on the right here, it was actually all shading itself out. So it kept the bottom cool, which kept the moisture in the ground. And so the plants are fine. And remember, these plants evolved not only to be, because they're native in this climate, they tolerate wet, but when it's dry once in a while, they can handle that too. So that's what you want. Good question. Yes?
Do you ever use biochar?
I have not personally done it on this one. When I expand I have to expand this one for our addition and put another one in the back. I may actually employ that, but biochar is something that you can order. You can actually make it. We were joking before, I should do a lecture on biochar, but then all of a sudden there'd be all these fires around town, people making biochar. Because you make it similar to charcoal. It's like a partially combusted wood, not completely. But it will provide, actually it's a huge benefit, and actually it definitely helps the health of your soil and provides a lot of nutrients and captures pollutants in it. So if you Google biochar, it's kind of a really interesting, it's relatively new that people are starting to do it, but it's been used for thousands of years in agriculture.
I think it's supposed to also hold on to the water.
Yes, yeah, it does. It absorbs water, it holds water. It's similar to compost. It holds water, but also will take in like pollutants and phosphorus and nutrients and things. So, yeah.
My soil is very clay. So what would your recommendations for changing the thing for the garden?
Well, again, what you want to do is you want to make sure that, number one, you want to maybe do a little hand auger or dig down a little bit, see what it's like underneath. Maybe there's better soil down a little deeper. If there's not, you still want to do then that infiltration test, see how much, look, if you fill it and it's just not emptying at all, it's just sitting there, that might be a little bit difficult to make a rain garden. You can turn it into sort of a wetland garden, which that's actually something that people have done. So it's, instead of being dry once in a while, it stays a little wet, but it also, and then it's only 8 inches, so it's not going to kill the plants, but you put plants in there that are more tolerant to being inundated by water. So it is something that you can also do. And believe it or not, you still will get some, maybe not as much as over here, but you'll still get some recharge. And the plants will actually suck it up and evapotranspirate it. So they'll also put it back into the atmosphere.
And for the underground PVC pipe, is that perforated pipe?
No, it's solid pipe because I want to get right from the roof to the rain garden. So it's solid. Another thing that just thought about, and I'll take your question in a second. I actually bermed up a little bit of the uphill end because I designed it to just capture the roof runoff here, and I wanted to get overwhelmed by land runoff. So because then it would have had to been much bigger. So I put a little berm so it's only capturing water from the roof. Yes.
I'm trying to think, so, I know you said like 10 to 15 feet from the house, but, like where I'm thinking would be good for me, it's near my garage. Like I don't have a basement, we have a crawl space, and then it's just like the garage and stuff, but is it okay to be a little closer, or would you still recommend it being farther out?
So the question is it okay to be a little closer to the house if you don't have the room, or it may look better or function better for you closer to the house? It was mentioned that you have a crawl space, and obviously and your garage is on a slab. So if it's on the opposite side by the garage, like if you put it on the opposite side, like the house is over here, you got the garage, and it's just on a slab, you can put it closer. You can put it within 5 feet. It's just you don't want it to be near a foundation. I would, again, even with a crawl space, I'd keep it at least 10 feet away. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes that's what I found out over time is it turns out it wasn't groundwater that was getting in our basement. And when we did this, now it's dry. So it was really just surface water runoff. So, yes.
I have a pop-up, and smoke that drains often,
Mm-hmm.
20 feet away from my house. Would I include that pop-up into the garden or outside of the garden, let it flow in?
I would do it on the outside to let it, if maybe either just upstream of it, uphill of it, to let it get right in. The reason I'd be worried about putting it in the rain garden, because if the water comes up higher than the pop-up emitter, and then it could, well, it's not that it'll backflood, but then it just, over time, it's gonna get clogged. So even with a pop-up emitter, every once in a while, you probably have to go in and reach in and clean it out from like lawn clippings and things like that. So in the rain garden itself, it's going to be more prone to getting clogged if you do that. Mine is actually, my pipe comes in, it's just an open pipe into the, there's enough head in the pipe that when there's enough pressure, even if there's leaves in it, it gets pushed out. So, but I have that pop-up emitter in case, that's not my distributor, that's my backup. Good question, yes. Yes?
So you also have these smaller beds close to the house. So I assume that they're working, you have multiple roofs. So I don't know, I think you're using the main roof to accept the stormwater for your rain garden, is that true?
Well, yeah, the idea was never to capture my entire roof. It was to do something, and also to create a positive drainage away from the house.
But you also have those like ancillary beds which must also act to,
That's a good question. We as a family decided we wanted to reduce our lawn area, and so these are all just planting beds. They're not rain gardens or anything like that. So we try to put plants in, some native, some not, but mostly native plants, and that also helps reduce rainfall runoff and things for us, and again reduces how much I have to mow. Yes.
So I'm in the borough, so thank you for the capturing of the water uphill from us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We have a spot in our yard that all the land form is such that it makes a big divot, so there's always pond in there. And I tried a few years ago to plant a lazy rain garden. I didn't like dig far enough. Is that the wrong place to do it, in the lowest point where everything sort of meets up and ponds?
It depends, because if you have a lot more wet tolerant plants, you can do that. So if it's constantly ponded, you're going to have like what are emergent wetland vegetation, like very what we call fac wet, meaning facultative wet. They have to be in a wetland environment, as opposed to being able to dry out. So if it stays wet all year, you're going to want to do that. You may also want to amend the soil. Sometimes those low areas, just with all the water, they tend to get compacted. So loosening up that soil might help, but also making sure, how deep does it get?
I mean, it gets, deep, but it drains eventually, depending
Yeah.
on the rain. But right now, there's a nice little.
Yeah, and you live down in Yardley, so I'm not sure where groundwater is, and if that's, if groundwater is relatively shallow, that could also be doing it. Could be obviously the fine grained nature of the soils, and then you can try to go in there and amend it. But it's going to be. You have amended the soils?
No, but that's.
Okay, yeah. So I would amend it with compost or try biochar, but I would amend it, and that usually also helps with its holding capacity. So it'll actually store some of it underground. Might not help with the ponding, but it'll definitely help with the plant growth. And then the evapotranspiration with that's an additional route to get rid of the water.
So the answer isn't to move the rain garden away from the lowest spot to capture some?
It depends. Like I said, you have to size it to make sure you're capturing what you want to capture. So if it's getting too much water from a bunch of different areas, it would have to be much larger to function properly. There is recommended. So if you want to capture your roof runoff, don't put it there. I would put it somewhere where there's not drainage going to that low spot. You want to keep it above the low spot somewhere if you really have a target area that you're trying to treat. Because the surrounding area will overwhelm it, and then it won't function. Cool. Yes?
Yeah, I'm part of the team that manages a demo park, which is next door, for native plants. We use arborist wood chips. Are you familiar with those? They're the raw, round twig. And the trees have been taken down by arborists.
Oh, the chips, when they go through the chipper.
Yep, exactly.
You want to make sure that that's well composted or aged.
Well, there are different beliefs on that, and some
Okay, I'm not an expert on mulch and what's good or not. I've just over the years heard don't put raw wood chips because it then ends up competing for the nutrients, and again, that's a little bit beyond my pay grade in terms of understanding that, so, but that's just what I've heard, so.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that, and I've also heard, and because the same issue, is not to amend the soil, because you're choosing plants that are adapted to the soil you have.
It depends. Now, one of the things, and actually, a lot of us live in neighborhoods that were constructed as a development. What do they do in a development? They come in, they strip all the topsoil. So usually, around here, land had about 12 inches of topsoil. They only return 4 inches back. They don't return the 12 inches back. So some of that gets shipped off or whatever. Plus, they're running over it with equipment. They're compacting the soil. They may fill an area that with soil that was from deeper, which has no has no nutrients in it whatsoever. It's pretty sterile. And so a lot of our yards, including the one where we live, it was built in the 40s, but it was a tract development, the soils are just not optimal a lot of times. So amending it is actually something you may have to do, especially if you have a newer development. It is something that you'd probably want to do to give those plants the best opportunity. Now, if you're in an area that was, you put the house and the surrounding grade was never disturbed, that's a whole nother situation. You don't have to initially amend it.
I would just really caution against amending, because some of the plants will take up too many nutrients. They will get too large and fluffy.
Well, and granted, I've amended this when I built it. I haven't amended it since. So I haven't done anything else like that. Now, yeah, the plants grow a lot. I'm sorry? 5 years. I think it was about 5 years old. So, but yeah, so I haven't had to amend it. As a matter of fact, in the fall, it's a good capture. It captures a lot of leaves. So, and sometimes I'll just leave them in there. So, yes.
Answer that lady's question about all the gutters in the house. If you made the rain garden large enough, you could have a landscape contractor connect downspout adapters to other downspouts and connect it all together, discharge into that garden. Question I have for you.
Yes.
Do you have an image of where the discharge occurs in the rain garden?
Where it does? Oh, yeah. So that's that's actually an excellent question. My yard is so flat, I couldn't discharge. If you can discharge it at the top of the 8 inches, where the invert, the bottom of the pipe is at the top, that's the best. Our yard is so flat, my invert's actually at the bottom of the rain garden. So when I get rain and it floods, and it goes up to the 8 inches, I do get back flooding into the pipe, but it's so far it only goes up to maybe back here. And like I said, with a lot of with the head and the pressure on the pipe, it usually keeps it pretty cleaned out. And then I have that back up in case. So, good question. Thank you. Yes.
Your pipe size 4 or 6 inches?
These were 4 inches. I didn't need more than 4 inches for this roof. If you have a big house and you're connecting like 3 or 4 different areas, you might go from a 4-inch to a 6-inch or something like that. Good. Yep. So, yes. Okay. I don't know. I can take a look at it after the talk, and I can see what it is. I'm not sure what that is or what the purpose would be, but I can take a look at that. Okay. Anyone else? Well, if you have questions, you can reach me, and so I have my email here. And so if you have any questions or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Or you have a great resource with the Environmental Advisory Council. And when are your meetings?
Our meetings, I can talk.
That's all right.
Well, I have to talk through the mic.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I have to talk to the microphone, otherwise it won't be recorded. But our meetings are on a Thursday, the second Thursday of the month from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in this room right here.
So that's something that, they're a great resource to talk to, and they have a lot of good information. So, yes. Oh, sorry.
It's going to be recorded and available
I believe it's recorded.
on the, where's it going to be, on the news or EAC?
It's going to be on the EAC website.
Yes, you have a question back there?
So I was going to ask the same thing, except a little different as far as the presentation itself, if that's going to be a PDF available on the website as well.
I can make it available. Yeah, I can give it to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yes. That's what we're talking about. The presentation will be available on the EAC website.
So the video of the presentation, however, the PDF of the slides is also requested.
I think that's going to be part of it. Sure. Definitely.
Yep. Alan, did you have a question, or did you ask it already? Oh, yes, okay. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? All right, with that, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Geoff. That was a first-class lecture. Also, I tend to be especially aesthetically motivated. Now, I've gone by Geoff's house. Geoff is a good friend of ours and Amy. And aside from the environmental benefits, that garden is actually drop-dead beautiful. So that's, I think, a real plus. Also, I want to give a little plug. Get that plug? Funny, right? Not that funny. Okay. For Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, I am a naturalist there. And this, excuse me, this time of year, we have our annual plant sale. And I might add that last year, we actually propagated on site 35,000 plants. Very high quality and local seed, which is real important. The other thing is on May 3rd, we are going to be having another lecture. This one, I called it Ark in the Park. Pretty good, huh? Ark in the Park, get it? All right. Anyway, at Memorial Park in Lower Makefield Township, it's going to start at 10 in the morning, and these real experts from ARC are going to have a live display of some of their falcons and other birds and explain the whole rehabilitation procedure. And on May 31st, in this room here, we're going to have a lecture by Mike Wheelbacher, a noted scientist and author, on microplastics. This is not necessarily going to be what I would call a fun type lecture, but it's going to be very interesting. So I don't think you want to miss that one. Also in the room right now are several members from our EAC. Paul Roden, would you raise your hand? Kevin Gallen, Jean Bray, Alan Dresser, Dominique Mitchell, and these people all work hard all year long to make events like this possible. Again, thank you for coming, and one of the reasons we've also had a good crowd today is not only because of Geoff's stature, but we have a new publicist, Dominique Mitchell. Now what we've actually done is we've gathered together a lot of scraps of paper and we formalized it. So when we have lectures like this and other events, we make sure now that we're going to hit all the people who we think would like to come. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming today on kind of a, not very nice day, and I hope to see you at our next lectures. Enjoy the rest of your day.